Hi, I'm Dr. Donald Boomgaarden, President of St. Joseph's University, New York, and I'd like to welcome you to Living Our Mission. Built on tradition and founded by the Sisters of St. Joseph more than 100 years ago, we are a mission-driven institution that provides a strong academic, value-oriented education with growing diverse campuses located in Patchogue and Brooklyn, New York, as well as online. Thank you for joining us. In this program, we will be discussing our university designation as it relates to the institution's long-standing history and its past. In April 2022, the New York State Department of Education granted us university status, an historic moment for our century-old institution. This exciting moment marked the beginning of our next chapter as a mission-driven university. While the change of designation from college to university will bring many benefits to our community, the academic focus, character, and qualities of St. Joseph's will remain unchanged. To talk more about this is Mary Ellen Freely, class of 1967 and Vice Chair of our Board of Trustees, and Dr. Philip Denny, Executive Dean for our Brooklyn campus and Associate Chair of History. So happy to have both of you here today. Each in your own way has played an incredible role at St. Joseph's University. You've seen so much over the previous years. You've been a part of the institution. Mary Ellen, it's especially a treat to have you because not only are you on the Board of Trustees and a graduate of the institution, but you've also been a very important force in education here in New York, particularly in Long Island, Nassau County, as a superintendent. You're also an author of books on leadership itself, and so the institution has had an incredible role in your life. So when you heard about the idea of becoming a university, how did you react to that? What were your feelings?
Well, I was extremely excited about it because I always felt that St. Joseph's was more than St. Joseph's College. Through my own personal experience, I felt very, very much that I was attending a university setting. So I was very excited at the possibility of us pursuing that.
And when you thought about your time as a student here, and then the success that you achieved later in life, what kinds of values and approaches to education were instilled in you as a student here that became valuable to you?
Well, every time I've ever interviewed for a position, I always credit St. Joseph's with enriching my personal life because I felt that at St. Joseph's I learned who I was personally and I developed my sense of confidence, and although I probably didn't realize my full potential till much later on, I felt that St. Joseph's had played an important role in helping me develop who I was as a person as well as a professional. My professional training here was just exemplary.
And your training significantly was female. In other words, at that time, it was a college for women.
Yes,
and so the sisters were very involved in this, and so they were incredible role models, were they not?
Yes, they were, and they were extremely well prepared in terms of their own academic backgrounds. I always felt that the sisters that taught us had achieved the pinnacle of their own educations, and we were so fortunate to be instructed by such very competent women, outstanding in their own fields.
And that is a part of the tradition of the past of St. Joseph's that I think lives on today in its own manner, slightly transformed, but still very much a part of the modern St. Joseph's University. Phil, now you're the executive dean, but you've worked here for many years as a faculty member. How did you feel when you heard the news that we were becoming a university?
It was exciting. I mean, there's no doubt that many of us here at the university are really excited about the change, and I think that, I mean, for me, it just sort of acknowledged that we've grown a lot over the past. I've been here for over 20 years, and we've grown a lot over the last 20 years. I know that the undergraduate population here just in Brooklyn is about double what it was when I first got here, and I think that university sort of status is it sort of exemplifies size and breadth of programming that is really what St. Joe's is all about now. So I was very pleased when I heard how, and I've spoken to a couple of the sisters. I was really pleased by how excited they are about it, and that made me feel even better about the change, frankly.
And when you spoke with the sisters about it, what was it that excited them, you think?
You know, I think it's for them likewise. It's sort of the sense like, wow, we're really a significant institution in New York now. We've really made a name for ourselves in Brooklyn and in Long Island, and I think that, sometimes this feels like a little niche of Brooklyn here, but there's certainly, I mean, we're sort of a bigger player than we've ever been before on sort of the cultural and educational landscape of both Brooklyn and Long Island. And I think the university status really recognizes that.
And I think, as both of you have said, the university status really more adequately describes who we really are. We basically have the same size and the same wherewithal of any of the regional universities around us. And so I think that for the board, when the discussion came up with the board, it was really more of a question of, well, why has it taken so long, rather than should we do it? Mary Ellen, from your perspective as someone who's played an important role in higher education and education in general in New York, what are the unique contributions of a St. Joseph's education, do you think, for a student?
I think that one of the most unique qualities that I found as an undergraduate and then took with me into the profession was the fact that it was such a personalized experience. And I always felt that the teachers that I had, the professors that I had, were really significantly interested in my well-being as a student and in my future as a professional educator. And I always took that with me, because many of my colleagues who had graduated from other universities or colleges never had that personal connection. And I always felt that I could come back to the college and now the university and reconnect with really outstanding people. So that really enriched my own growth and my own experience here.
So that relationship that you had with your professors was a lifelong relationship.
Yes.
It wasn't just for the 4 years that you were
Correct.
here, right? And Phil, have you had that experience with your students?
Oh, absolutely. I think that it's one of the things I tell students all the time. I mean, it's like, you really get to know your professors here. The professors get to know you as well. They'll be ready to write you a letter of recommendation. It'll actually be personalized.
Right.
I mean, they're actually going to know you. So that's it's a huge, and it's one of those things that you could, college is sort of a nice, it sort of has this kind of cozy vibe to it, the sense that, we are all together in sort of a small sense. We all know one another. But I think we're going to keep that just as well with the university. Nothing is changing about the way that the students are interacting with their faculty. We're not going to get bloated or big.
Yeah. Well, I think that the motivation for the title change is certainly for the benefit of our students. And so it's something that will help them in their careers. But I think you're absolutely right. It's not going to change the DNA of the institution. It would just be completely contrary to our nature to start to become a large mammoth institution. Was not our goal at all. But I do think that for many families that are watching today and students, that they should understand that there is a lifelong connection that you can form with your professors, and they will help you throughout your entire career, not just right when you graduate, but as the years go by, as a resource. I don't know, Mary Ellen, if you've had that experience as well.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There are still people here at the college that I feel I could go to and ask them to support me in my own personal efforts, whether it's publishing an article and asking them to review it in advance, or I always think of Sister Mary Florence Burns, who had such an impact on my life. We all clamored to be in her classes. We just couldn't wait to get into her classes. And I was an English minor, so I had a lot of courses with Sister Mary Florence. And to this day, if I stop by the convent to say hello to her, I know she will be there for me, and she would do anything she could possibly do to help me advance in my own career.
I think one of the challenges that you and I face, on the board when we think about the institution is how can we maintain that sense of St. Joseph's, the character of St. Joseph's in the coming years. How can we maintain that spirit? I mean, what do you think, Phil? What are some things that we need to be doing or that we are doing to help keep that spirit alive?
That's a good question. I mean, I think talking about it like this is a big part of it. There's no doubt, I think just having conversations like this about what St. Joe's means to people who've been here and people who
Right.
are here. I think that's a big part of
And
it.
people who may come here.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that, you know, making sure the faculty, and the faculty all feel this way too, I think. I don't think there's any doubt that they love having that sort of, that personal interaction with their students. And I know many faculty members are, you know, stay in very close contact with a lot of their students throughout the years. I get emails from former students regularly about, you know, sometimes asking me for a favor, or asking me for a letter, sometimes just asking me for some advice, and I think it's wonderful. I don't think that that'll ever change. Our classes are small still, and we're not aiming to change any of the sort of the size of our classes or anything like that. University status doesn't mean big bulked out lecture halls. It
Right.
still means the sort of the tiny classes and the small group interaction that is pivotal to the way we teach.
And I think in the world we live in today, where there's so much change, there's so much turmoil, that making sure that St. Joseph's does hang on to that tradition is an important job, you know, for us. You know, that's when we talk at board meetings about the future of the institution, it's always with that idea of how can we protect and maintain the traditions of St. Joseph's and not lose them. It's very difficult for institutions, especially we have the declining number of religious, and so for that reason, you know, the logical question is, well, how are you going to maintain that spirit of the sisters in the coming generations? How are you going to approach that? And I think that, you know, we're doing our best to do that, but as Phil, as you say, we're being intentional and we talk about it in terms of trying to better understand what are some of the steps that we could be taking. And of course, part of that is making sure that the current sisters we have are very involved, and we do. We have a number on the board. We still have some that work with us on campus. Very important part of life at St. Joseph's. Well, we have to take a quick break. But still to come, more about our new university designation.
Ready to be, not to seem? Ready to seize opportunity, take the lead, and raise the bar? Ready to get the job done on the front line, at the front of a classroom, or in the boardroom? With campuses in Patchogue, Brooklyn, and online, St. Joseph's University, New York delivers a strong, values-oriented, and affordable education so you're ready for an exciting career and a life of authenticity and integrity. St. Joseph's University, New York. Ready, set, Joes.
Welcome back to St. Joseph's University, New York, living our mission. We were discussing our university designation with a focus on the past. Mary Ellen, I wanted to ask you this question. I've actually wanted to ask you this question for quite a while. When you were at St. Joseph's as a student in the 60s, what were some of the things that you think helped to give you the insights that made you so successful as a leader? What kinds of leadership skills did you develop as a student here?
Well, I think back in those days, and it does seem like a long time ago sometimes, we had so many opportunities. And we were always encouraged to pursue different opportunities through clubs or activities, whatever it may be. So that I remember in particular being able to chair different committees as a student. And that was very important to my personal development, to assume leadership roles later on in life. But I also have some very, very funny memories of those days because, as you probably have heard, Don, there was a buzz among the students. Why were we still an all-woman school? That changed right after I graduated. Actually, my sister, who is also a graduate, was the first class to come in with men. I mean, it was shocking. It was absolutely shocking. And in addition to that, we were very concerned because there were a lot of restrictions placed on us as young women. For example, one of my classmates did not come to graduation because she had gotten married. Oh my, that was like, we couldn't even envision such a thing. And another young woman from my class was expecting a baby. Can you imagine the horror of this? So we had some interesting times as the class of '67, but we also had some wonderful times. And there were young women in my class who emerged really as true leaders in their own right then, during the college days. And some of them today have demonstrated through their careers that they were well prepared for those leadership roles. Some of my dearest friends actually are also former superintendents of school and things like that.
I think, and I've met many of them, and I've met many of the alums from that era, and you know, they speak, of course, always about the sisters and the model that the sisters presented in the classroom, the model of excellence, the model of scholarly ability, and having that female role model was quite remarkable for that day and age, not to be underestimated. And then, as you mentioned, you know, being the president of a club or working in a club, also through athletics, there are many ways. I mean, Phil, we have a lot of those opportunities for students on campus today, do we not?
Oh yeah, there are dozens of clubs going on right now. I've met a number of the club leaders at a luncheon last Monday. Of course, I see them around otherwise, but there are a huge number of clubs and a variety that is sort of, I think it's changed. I'm sure it's changed over the years. Some clubs that were popular then might not be anymore, and vice versa. But I think it's been, I mean, the students have, I think the opportunities for leadership are amazing. You often talk to students who just thought, like, you know, when I first came here, I was kind of a wallflower. I was really quiet, and then they found their niche here, and then all of a sudden they're end up, you know, leading a club or you know, giving speeches, you know, being valedictorian. I mean, there's pretty amazing.
Well, the campuses are small enough to where a student can feel comfortable taking a chance.
That's
you know,
exactly right.
right? And so a student, and I've had this conversation with many parents who will say, we were at this institution, we've come back to St. Joseph's because at St. Joseph's, you know, my student was able to be who they were, and they weren't afraid, and they felt embraced by that smaller environment.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's undoubtedly one of the huge attractions for parents and students themselves. Parents feel like their kids aren't going to get lost here, and students feel like they're not going to get lost here.
And we have a great history of that in terms of our retention rates, very high retention rates, well over 80%, and our graduation rate, you know, the same way. Once we get the student, they're in an environment where they feel comfortable and happy. And if they don't, then we want to know why. We want to work with them and help them.
Yeah, and they feel like they can succeed here too. I think that's the other thing. They're happy, but they also feel like they're learning to do great while they're here.
And we talk about clubs and athletics as a place to learn leadership, but the classroom is also a place where they learn leadership. Phil, what are some of the things that we do in our classes to help students in that manner?
That's a good question. I mean, many of our classes, again, they're very small. I mean, the students cannot, you know, they have to be involved in class for the class to work. I think most of our classes have, you know, there are a bit of lectures, but there's a lot of discussion in virtually every class. And that's one of the great ways to learn, I think, the interaction between students and faculty. Give a lot of students the sort of the sense like, wow, my ideas really are good. I really do understand the reading, or I'm learning to understand it through these interactions in class. So I think that, I mean, to me, that's the real sort of interaction between faculty and students is tremendous.
And Mary Ellen, would you say, you know, based on your experience, you know, as a professor at St. John's and as a superintendent, how would you describe St. Joseph's approach to the student and to student learning?
Well, I agree wholeheartedly with what Phil said. I think that it's the personal interaction that makes a difference, and the willingness of the professor to listen and hear all the different opinions and not select only, you know, small percentage of the class for participation, but everyone here in every class was always heard. And if you dared try not to be heard, you were not allowed to. I have one of my classmates slept through most of Father Hession's classes, and on the last class, philosophy, on the very last class, and he said, "Miss So-and-so, good morning, how are you? Now tell us what you thought about this semester." And he noticed immediately that she had not participated, and he didn't let her get away with that for 1 second. So there was tremendous interaction among all of us. And I would often turn around, being at the beginning of the alphabet, I was always seated in the front, and I would often turn around and wait to hear another student's comment or reflection, because I knew that student was well prepared and very insightful. So that interplay was really important to us.
That's true, and it's a respectful one too. Like,
Yes.
I've never had the students always, even when they don't agree with one another, the back and forth has always been sort of very respectful and thoughtful. I think that's a wonderful thing that, you know, of course the professors have to push that too, but it works great.
Well, teaching the students how they can talk about controversial and difficult issues and giving the language to do so, I think is one of our important tasks for the coming years.
Right. In my freshman year, I was in Mr. Trousdale's class the day that President Kennedy was assassinated. And what an experience that was. He was a very young professor at the time, but he knew how to allow us to talk and express ourselves in that class before he released us to the, quote, rec room. And it was a very, very powerful class. I remember it very clearly. And that was a very long time ago. But he had that gift of listening, really listening and responding to student concerns. And he didn't cut anyone off from what their beliefs were or what their thoughts were.
And Phil, now you started teaching here some time ago.
Yeah.
And so you've had a chance to see the institution in recent years change a little bit. What are some of the changes and transformations that you've witnessed?
Well, I mean, as I've mentioned before, it's grown a lot. I mean, even here in Brooklyn, there's been a number of new majors that have come up, and the number of students coming in is larger than it's been before. And that's wonderful at the undergrad level. Graduate level, too, I think is one of the big transformations is sort of an expansion of our graduate offerings. I think that's one of the things that university status is really sort of upholds the importance of our graduate offerings now, both within the institution but outside as well. I think that university status is sort of critical for our graduate programs.
Certainly, since you mentioned it, we've had some excellent growth, and we have some new graduate programs, for example, a Master's of Social Work. And in other areas, and that is one of the criteria that the regents were looking at when they awarded us the status. When you look at the future and the role of the future, how it informs the present, what kind of growth or extension in graduate areas do you see for us?
That's a good question. I mean, I think there would probably be more expansion in one of our hallmark programs forever has been our education programs, our undergraduate education programs, and I imagine that those are going to continue to grow both at the undergraduate level, but especially at the graduate level. I know that the need for teachers is greater than ever before, and more people want to go back to teaching or want to learn how to become teachers after they've already got their degree in something else. And so I think that expanding our graduate education offerings, it fits perfectly within our history and our mission. It's something we're excellent at, and it's something that we're likely to continue to expand at the graduate level. But there are going to be other things too, like your Master's of Social Work is going to, that's a wonderful, again, very mission-driven program that it meets a massive societal need in New York and really everywhere. And I think that that's going to be an amazing new program for us.
You know, I think that for us to stay true to that mission does involve creating new programs, but programs that fit the traditions of the school, certainly education and social work. What do you think, Mary Ellen, about this issue of, let's focus specifically on education. I mean, education is an area where in many colleges and universities they've seen declines, they've seen serious problems. How do you think St. Joseph's can address those issues as it moves forward?
Well, I think education is very cyclical. And when I graduated in 1967, there was a glut of teachers available to staff classrooms. Actually, the first job I had was a shared teaching position with another teacher from another school I won't mention right now, because I felt so much better prepared than she was. And then we, goes in dips and peaks and valleys. So right now I think we need to focus on educating young people, men and women, because it was such a female-oriented discipline for so long, but we need men in the classroom, we really do. And the graduate program in education, although I know we have some courses in that, we certainly could expand that, because there are people in the field who are looking to transition now into leadership roles. They're ready to move out of the classroom, and they're ready to move into leadership positions either in a school or a district. And we should be offering that opportunity for them as well.
Well, I want to thank both of you today. I couldn't ask for two better leaders to chat with about the future of St. Joseph's. I want to thank all of you at home for joining us today, and thank you for watching St. Joseph's University, New York, Living Our Mission.